Well, tonight our speaker is Dr. Lee Smith. The relationships that we've had with each other, both professional and personal, is one of the most delightful things in my life. He's got a truly inquisitive mind and a wealth of knowledge, and I think you'll get a sense of both of them tonight. He was a full professor at the University School of Medicine in internal medicine. And remains an adjunct professor up there. He started the stress management clinic at the university. He moved to LDS Hospital, where he started a wellness clinic. When he went into private practice, he continued to have a wellness-oriented program that he's been offering. He's one of the people in Salt Lake who has perhaps more of an imprint on wellness than anybody I can think of. Though he's trained as a physician, I'm just waiting for the day that I'm surprised to find out that he's really been a psychologist undercover all this time, because he really understands the psychological part and the deeper aspects of ourself that play a part in our health. And tonight he's going to talk not only about the psychological parts, but the spiritual part. One person asked if this was going to be a meeting about God, and I want to reassure you that this is not a religious event. But those of you who have really suffered with this illness sometimes have recognized that we can't do it all by ourselves, and we have to reach deep within. And so tonight I hope you'll have some new insights about how to do that. Dr. Smith?
Dr. Drescher here has really held this group together in a lot of ways, more than you will ever know, and deeply admire this man. This is kind of an interesting topic tonight. Most of my discussions over the years at this meeting or at our conferences have been very scientific, and they've been about medications for fibromyalgia and neurobiology and so on. And we'll talk momentarily about that. But this is a very different kind of thing than what we've sometimes discussed in here, but a very important one. Often with widespread pain like fibromyalgia and fatigue, if you ask a person, does stress affect this? It's almost a universal, well, yeah, it does. I think when I get stressed, things get worse. And so we're going to talk tonight about stress resilience. I've spent a lot of time over the years thinking about what are the principles of that, and we'll talk about that. But I got interested in this many years ago, and one of the things that was a triggering event, I went to a conference on guided imagery. Now, guided imagery is where you find a guide from within yourself to sort of help you solve problems. And it was a real interesting experience for me. I'd never done anything like that, where you go to a kind of a beautiful, safe place in your mind, and you invite your guide, your internal spirit guide, to come and talk with you. Then you wait and see what shows up. And in my case, there was this old man with a leather jacket and a staff, and he came, I was out in this beautiful meadow and soaking up all this beautiful scenery, and you become part of that. And you invite him to come, and he walks up here, and here's this guy who knows me completely, and he likes me, and he knows all the bad stuff as well as the good stuff, and he's very, very smart. And we start talking about things. And, I'll try to finesse things a little bit, and he'll catch me there. Now, let's hear the real story. And had these wonderful tips that really kind of changed my life. Well, I'm just meditating on this. I'm just thinking about this stuff. And I came to realize that within every one of us, we have this very wise place that knows the answers to the problems. That's how to access that. This is just one technique for accessing your own deep wisdom and being able to actually, sort of dialogue with your deep self. And we'll talk more about that. Now, you received a handout tonight. Just set that aside. That's for later on. Okay, and don't get caught up in that while we're talking about some of these preliminary things. Here's what I thought we'd talk about. Up on the screen here, stress, fear, pain, and suffering, how they fit together. And we'll talk a little bit about the notion of quieting the overactive nervous system. In past times, we've described how fibromyalgia is sort of a classical example of an oversensitive, over-responsive nervous system, over-responding not only to pain, but to gut signals and bladder signals and stress signals and things. So how do we quiet that non-pharmacologically? We'll touch on a little bit tonight. We'll talk about 4 principles of stress resilience that come out of a multitude of studies. I'm not going to show you all of those. We'll come back to it in a bit. And if you filter how you handle things through these 4 principles, it can create some resilience as opposed to being blown away. Awareness of the 2 minds. I gave you this little hint from this guided imagery example a moment ago. It was kind of like I had 2 minds. I got, my head mind is all caught up in these problems, and here's this deep wisdom place. And how do you get the 2 together is an interesting part of this whole story. And we'll talk about some just practical approaches. Now, the most effective ways to do this are experiential, not just talking about it. And we really don't have time tonight to do a lot of experiential things. But once you have the vision of the possibilities, then you can start figuring out how to, use the techniques that get you there. Okay, so that'll be the way we go. First of all, just momentarily going to talk about pain and fear, acute versus chronic. I was talking to a dear friend not long ago that described this woman giving a talk holding a glass half full of liquid. And, you kind of expect what she's going to ask. Is the glass half full? Is it half empty? No, that's not what she asked. She said, how heavy do you think this is? And people sort of sized up the glass and, how many ounces of liquid, and they made some guesses. And then she says, let's come back later. And she carried this around for a long period of time. And at the end of the time, she held it out and said, how heavy is the glass? And they did their calculations. And she said, I want to tell you, it's a whole lot heavier now than it was the first time I asked you, as I've been holding my arm out here with this. Okay, now this is like acute versus chronic. Acute pain is very different than chronic pain. And acute stress is very different than chronic stress. If you kind of think about it, why do we have pain? Why are we designed to have pain? Pardon?
To tell us something's wrong.
Okay, yeah, tell you something's wrong. It protects you. If I put my hand on a burning stove, it makes me pull my hand off so I don't wreck my hand. Okay? But, interestingly, and we'll look at this in just a moment, the same signal that tells me that's painful now makes me afraid to touch the stove. The fear and the pain work together to protect you acutely. The chronic pain begins to be a very different thing. It often involves dysfunctional pain processing. The system's not working right. And that's also true of chronic anxiety, an anxiety disorder. It's a dysfunctional system over-responding to things too much. It's a dysfunctional processing. We're going to talk about that. The concept of pain and suffering. A few years ago, I went to the American Pain Society meetings. This is the national meeting of all the pain experts. And they had a book called Pain and Suffering that they were touting as a wonderful book. In fact, they bought, a few thousand copies of this and handed it out free. And the person that was trying to convince everybody to read it said, this is a terrific, fun read. You're going to really enjoy reading this book. And the next person that stood up was a lawyer and said, only at the American Pain Society is a book called Pain and Suffering called a fun read. Okay, but there is actually some very interesting stuff. Now, here's a little diagram that I have shown this group a number of times talking about neurobiology, but we're going to put it in a little different context. These are pain pathways. Down here in the lower corner, left corner, you'll have some pain stimulus. This is out in the tissue. That signal comes in on the nerve to the spinal cord, connects with another nerve that carries the signal up to the brain, and goes out to the sensory cortex and tells you it's painful. But interestingly enough, that same signal that's gone up to tell you it's painful goes over to the limbic system and memory systems in the middle, and this ends up with the fear and the suffering. And some of the same neurochemicals are involved in creating the fear that create the pain. And you have dysfunctional pain processing, too much. A little pain signal becomes a big one, or a little stress signal is a big one. Because of this oversensitive nervous system, you can see too much suffering for the amount of damage that's out here in the tissue. Well, things that sensitize this, that is, make the nervous system over-responding to the fear and the suffering and the pain, are things like this, just anxiety and fear itself. The more you worry that this is going to be bad, actually sensitizes the nervous system more. The more you give attention to it, empowers that signal going up. Let's just think of an example. Let's suppose that you're at a party, and there's lots of noise, and there's music going on. But you're in a conversation with somebody, and your whole attention is there, and you're caught up. What happens to all the noise and the music? Sort of disappears, doesn't it? See, the nervous system is as much designed to respond, to inhibit stimuli, as it is to respond to a stimulus. And that inhibitory track, it kind of comes down. The signal now sends a signal down to inhibit the pain signal. And if you didn't have that inhibitory component of the nervous system, you're just bombarded with stimuli. You'd be looking here and there and everywhere. You could never focus on anything. So this is a very important point. Where you give your attention empowers that, like the conversation, and inhibits the rest. If I give my attention to the noise, oh gosh, why is it so noisy? I can hardly hear you around. You lose the conversation. So where you give your attention becomes very important, and how to get good at giving my attention where I want to give it. We're going to come back to all of that. Loss of control makes the nervous system start over-responding. Now, on the other side of the equation, you've got these inhibitory tracks that I just described, and I've listed 4 neurotransmitters of inhibition. That 5-HT is serotonin, norepinephrine, dopamine, and a thing called GABA. They inhibit the pain, and they inhibit the stress response. But some people, and particularly with fibromyalgia, have a genetic problem of those neurotransmitters and don't inhibit well. Well, there are other things. That's incidentally where antidepressants work, is on those neurotransmitters that are somewhat lacking. But there are other things that desensitize the nervous system that create inhibition. Here's some of them. That one's not surprising at the top. Being able to get calm and at peace, to literally quiet things down and get good at that. And there are simple relaxation and meditative techniques that allow you to do that. And that's an interesting one. Love. calms things, focuses things. I had, when I was at the university, had about a dozen. I never wrote this up, but I thought it was very interesting. About a dozen, they were all ladies who had this whole syndrome of fibromyalgia, migraines, irritable bowel, and so on, who felt adoringly and passionately in love. And everything disappeared. And there's some reasons why. I'll show you that in just a little bit. And then if the symptoms started coming back, one of the key questions is, how's this new relationship going? It's very interesting, okay? That love has this ability to bring connectedness. Well, we'll get more into that. Hope. It kind of gives you a sense of control. In fact, here it is, sense of control. If you have a sense of control, things begin to quiet down. And even some music, some kinds of music and touch will quiet the nervous system. Music therapy has been getting more interest in recent times. Now, I want you to just remember those words, because we're going to hit them several times. But love and connectedness, hope, this internal sense of control, starts showing up in some interesting ways that have effects on these same neurotransmitters. How to create the transformation from this oversensitized state to a more sense of control with whatever's there. Okay, now let's go a little further. Just momentarily, up in the brain, here are the two places right here that makes the serotonin, called the raphe nuclei, and this locus coeruleus, where most of the norepinephrine is made. And you'll notice there are tracks that go down the spinal cord. That's to inhibit the pain. But they also go up into the limbic system. That's the emotional part. And to the prefrontal cortex, the thinking part. And you'll notice here are a couple of interesting little places. The amygdala. The job of the amygdala in the brain is to protect you by scanning for danger. And in fibromyalgia or in anxiety or even depression, the amygdala is on overdrive. It's scanning all the time for dangerous stuff. That's where the attention is. And as a result, the nervous system is sensitized. The hippocampus is involved with memory. And old memories of the meaning of this, the emotion, the meaning of some event, the pain that goes with it is located in that hippocampus. And you'll notice, see the serotonin and the norepinephrine and the dopamine is in there as well, are starting to dysregulate those automatic parts of the brain. Up here in the prefrontal cortex, there's a little place right up here in the dorsal part that's sort of like the wise place, the executive thinking that tells the amygdala, cool it. Okay? This isn't that dangerous. This is the rational, wise place that says, no, you don't have to be worried about that. We've seen that before. Calm down. That part of the brain starts getting turned off with anxiety, depression, fibromyalgia, irritable bowel, and so on. So you got this amygdala scanning for stuff, and the wisdom part isn't able to tune in unless you train it to. And that's what a lot of our discussion tonight is how do you get the wisdom part to quiet the over-responsiveness. Okay, so that's one more slide on neurochemistry. What are the effects of ways of thinking on these same neurotransmitters we just talked about? Now, the studies in this are fascinating. If we had time, I think you'd find them very interesting, but I'm just going to summarize because we don't have time. If you can increase the sense of control, up goes serotonin. It's like giving an SSRI antidepressant. So, having a sense of control. Okay? Second, love and cooperation raises the dopamine and the endorphins. The neurotransmitter of love is dopamine. The neurotransmitter of excitement, and interest, and pleasure is dopamine. Okay? And love and cooperation, up goes dopamine. Some people speculate, use functional MRI scans, and you have people in a, and I told you I wouldn't talk about it. Let me just quick summarize one. They'll give them a game to play, and you can either compete and beat the other person and get a fair number of points, or you can cooperate and solve it together and you get fewer points. So there's the dilemma. Do we compete, me versus you, and who's going to win, who's going to lose? Or do we cooperate and we both win? But you get fewer points. That's the dilemma. And when they cooperate, up goes the dopamine. When you compete and try to beat them out, down goes the dopamine. And some have even speculated this is why sometimes people cooperate against their own self-interest, because you feel good when you do that. Well, okay, another one. Exercise, or just getting turned on to a purpose. Dr. Drescher over here has this vision of what he wants to accomplish, and starts a new clinic, and he's excited about a project he's telling me about, and as you get excited and turned on, up goes the norepinephrine, up goes the dopamine, and that creates stress resilience. Purpose and meaning gives you this resilience instead of it being purposeless. Okay? And one other, some of the deep relaxation and meditation techniques improve sleep. That helps the nervous system a lot. Increases serotonin, the GABA, and decreases this sympathetic tone, which is the thing that kind of keeps these on overdrive. So you begin seeing some of these same things I had on the little list, the desensitizers, love and cooperation, internal control, purpose and meaning, listed as things that may be very helpful, like sometimes the medications are, but actually improve the quality of life even more than the medications. So here we have these words again. I'm going to circle them. Control, love and connection, purpose and meaning, some of the meditation. So answer this question for me. Is stress good or bad? Yes.
It's a type of stress.
Sometimes it feels bad. Does it feel good sometimes? Yeah, sometimes it feels good, doesn't it? So here's the interesting question. What makes the difference in whether it's the bad kind or the good kind? Hans Selye, who's kind of the father of stress studies a century ago, said the bad kind is called distress. We all know that word. I wonder if you know the word for what the good kind is called. We don't concentrate much on that. It's called eustress, EU stress, like true stress. Okay, so good stress, bad stress. I mean, you've had times, have you not, when you put under a little pressure and it makes you rise to the occasion and you get stuff done and you turned on and because you did this. Hey, that's the good kind. There's some interesting studies, incidentally, in health. I'll just describe, for example, an animal study. This is true in animals and people. You put the animals under stress. I won't describe exactly how. You give one group a way to control it. Oh, I shouldn't tell you this yet. What makes the difference, whether stress is good or bad?
Control.
Okay, a sense of control. We saw that a couple times. That's one of them. There are 4 principles. The sense of control is one of them. So what they did, they give the animals a way to control the stress. They're under stress, but they got a little lever that they can hit and it controls it. Another group, no lever. Fix it, out of my control. Another group just kind of not really stressed. They're a control group. And then they expose them to things that cause disease. Viruses, inject tumors, and see which ones get sick or get the cancer. And it's very interesting. The under stress, the ones with the ability to control it, get the disease about 1/4 as often as the victims. And the ones under stress with the ability to control it did better than the non-stressed group. The eustress is not only, and it makes you bring it on, let me show you what I can do with it, but it actually is healthy if you have a sense of control of dealing well with it. There is, however, that's one of the four principles. You've seen some of the others. We'll come back. But there's a paradox. And this is where we start getting into kind of some of these wisdom principles, spiritual wisdom even. A paradox about a sense of control. The paradox is this. The more you try to take control of the world out there, the more out of control it feels. Because you can't control it. You remember I mentioned that a sense of control raises serotonin? People who have low serotonin function, the brain starts eliciting controlling behavior to get what it needs. Controlling behavior is sort of a symptom of serotonin dysfunction. So, you can't control the world out there or other people. The flip side of the paradox is this. The more you let go trying to control the world out there and instead respond to it the way that you would deeply admire, the way your deep wisdom would say, yeah, that's the way a person ought to do this. And as you do that, you feel an internal sense of control. It's not controlling the world, it's an internal sense of control. This has about to do with integrity to your deep wisdom and values. That's a spiritual principle. Okay, let's go a little further. Dealing with times of chaos. Okay, we all have chaotic events in our life. You might wonder, is chaos good or bad? Well, it's stressful time. We're sort of cruising along in our comfortable rut. And then something happens where the old automatic rut doesn't work anymore. Well, what helps to deal with chaos, where everything's out of control, it feels out of control? What is it that gives you some kind of sense of control when everything is chaotic? My old paradigms and ways of thinking aren't working. One of them is hope. Just expecting that on the other side of this chaos, we'll have an even better way of dealing with it. It's not a matter of getting back to the old way, but on the other side, something is going to be better as the result of thinking through this chaos. Hope itself. Hope's a spiritual principle. In medicine, one of the most proven things we have is the placebo effect. For anything, almost. What is it? Positive expectation. Something good is going to happen to this. And the brain goes to work clear down to cellular levels to make things better. Okay? Here's another one. Two of them. See, here we are, back again to these same things. Sense of purpose and meaning and loving support. Let me tell you a story that illustrates this. Kurt Hayes and I were talking a few years ago, and he described the family bought a big erector set for Christmas for their kids. And so on Christmas they got out and they built this great big Ferris wheel out of this erector set. And then as they got this big thing put together, they discovered that in the package there was a little motor. But the motor hooked on to the Ferris wheel with a different hub than the one that they used. The hub holds the whole thing together. But you can't hook the motor to it. But there was another hub that hooks to the motor. Well, here's the dilemma. You pull the hub out, everything's going to be chaos, right? Okay. What do? Call the whole family together. Everybody puts their arms around this big Ferris wheel. And then very carefully they screw out the old hub and put the new one in quickly. And now you've got a better Ferris wheel. Okay, so, the old way, but the chaos held together by loving support, hope that on the other side of this we're going to have a better Ferris wheel, and that there's a sense of purpose in going through this chaos, a better Ferris wheel. Okay, it's a simple analogy, but That's the way you get through chaos. And you think about times when things have been different. Loving support, just the expectation. Don't know what it is, but somewhere on the other side of this, we're going to learn something. We're going to be wiser. We're going to be smarter, whatever it is. Starts creating a sense of control. We can deal with this. It's worth it. Purpose. I'm going to dwell on this notion of a sense of connectedness. One of the great principles in the spiritual traditions, whatever ones that you like or consider, of what is spiritual well-being, one of the great principles is a sense of connectedness, oneness, beyond myself. And this has to do with connectedness to the earth, nature, our surroundings, to other people, to one's deepest self that we're going to take some time tonight to explore, and to the sources of one's spiritual strength, whatever those may be. This is the connectedness. Now, some important spiritual lessons from the nature of things. Quantum science is taking a look at what are the basic building blocks of the universe, of us, of everything. And, we've gotten down, we used to think it was atoms, and then we had subatomic particles, and then quarks, and so on. And now we're down to strings of energy. String theory stuff you've heard in quantum physics. That the basic building blocks is energy. Those strings. And these strings, it turns out, love to get together and start creating new things. And one of the things they create are photons. Those are like the little particles of light. Light can be seen either as a wave or as a particle when you study it. And here's an interesting study in science that photons, when they're going through, they love to get together too and start creating these larger pieces of light. Now, what I'm describing is the basic building blocks love to get together, to connect. And then the photons do. And then we get this whole thing about Einstein stuff about the interconvertibility of energy and matter. So now they start forming little particles in the atom. And then this question, are atoms really mostly empty space? But for years we talked about, we've got this little nucleus and these electrons flying around, and basically we're mostly all empty space. But is it really empty? What you really have, this is filled with energy that holds the particles together. It says which level that you're in. The great spiritual traditions talk about spiritual energy being the same thing. How do you create energy which regulates, holds us together, keeps things in order? And then the atoms combine into molecules. So now you've got atoms coming together and they make molecules. And they create the darndest things. Think about this. You are, what would you say is the most common component of your body?
Water.
Water, yeah. 80% water or something like that. Well, what's water? You get this gas, oxygen, and hydrogen. You put them together, you get water. I mean, you get this is weird. And you put other things together and you get solid compounds. So you begin to see how this sort of spiritual energy, but coming together in connectedness, starts creating a number of things. And then the molecules combine into little organelles in a cell. And then you have cells, and then the cells start combining. And one of the interesting things is that if you perturb this cell, you threaten it, or you stimulate it with the neurotransmitter. Neurotransmitters will hit a cell and hook onto little receptors in the membrane. And we've often thought, well, it's kind of a little linear process. This is the way we used to think. It hits here, and then that affects this, and that affects this, in a linear kind of way. But that's not the way it happens. Something hits that cell, and all these things in the middle instantaneously are working together in a response. It's like a quantum reaction, a connectedness, as opposed to I'm here, and then I hit that, and then you hit that, and then you hit that separately. And here's, I think, the really interesting thing. When you start looking at you as a person, as your body, the cells all have a higher purpose than themselves. They're there to make you work, help you, to create for you, the whole you, their role. And they commune with the whole process. You don't have rugged individualist cells. If you do have rugged individualist cells that want to take over and be in charge, what do you call that? Cancer. Exactly right. That's what cancer is. Doesn't cooperate with the rest. But think about this. Can the heart cell work without the blood cell? Be a heart attack if you don't get blood to your heart. And the job of the heart cell is to pump the blood around to all the tissues to give you oxygen. But can the blood cell work without the bone? Well, blood cells are made in bones. They're made in bone marrow. Can any of those work without the lung cells? Well, red blood cells are to carry oxygen that comes in from the lung and gives it to the red blood cell, but then the heart pumps around. And you begin seeing this pattern that cells are a community that work together for a higher purpose in communion. And they can't be individual. Hang on to that motion for a minute. There's an acceptance in cells. They all come from the same source, stem cells. Depending on how the gene or stressor affects it, it'll turn into a heart cell or a blood bone marrow cell or something. They're all from a common source. And they accept each other. And awareness. That is, they're on the alert for what's going on out there, what's happening in the environment. What happens if a germ gets into the body? What happens if a pain signal occurs? The whole body reacts. It's not like one system versus that system versus... You perturb one of those things and the whole system works in concert to give you resilience, to protect you, help you be able to deal with whatever these challenges are that are hitting you. There's some wonderful wisdom in this. Here are the words I'd like to have you hang on to that your cells are teaching you here. Okay. Purpose, connectedness, this acceptance and awareness, and these create body resilience to take care of you. All right. Now, there's a little question to ask yourself. When stress comes up, something happens, you've got a teenager that's giving you some guff. And that sometimes happens. It may not happen in your family. It has happened in our family where teenagers are kind of rebelling a little bit, or they're wanting to pursue their own oats and want to be in charge of their life. And they have to separate from the parent, and so they're giving you a little guff. Okay? Ask yourself this question. Remember, distress versus eustress. One of the principles of resilience is this connectedness. So you just ask yourself, is the way I'm handling this connecting us more deeply or disconnecting us? And the answer to that will tell you whether it's distressful, disconnecting, or eustressful, connecting. And if your intent is, with whatever difference of opinions we have, conflicts are not good or bad. Conflicts just are. We see things from different perspectives. We have different priorities. And there's a difference, okay? That's not good or bad. It just is. Are we handling this difference of opinion in a way that connects us more deeply, engenders trust, or disconnects us? And your inner wisdom will guide you. If your intention is to connect, your inner wisdom will tell you how to do that. So attention to your intention to connect. That's one of the points I'm making. Now, just to summarize this, a colleague of mine and I, Keith Carey, just finished the 4th edition of a textbook where we gathered hundreds of studies of mental effects on physical health. In the last chapter or two, summarized what are the key principles, lots of proof, lots of data about good health outcomes. Now we're talking about health utilization and illness and death rates and all those measurable kind of health things. And 4 principles, lots of data. Here they are again. Okay, this internal locus of control. People who have that have better health than people that feel controlled by the external environment. It makes me so bad. If it happened to you, you'd feel awful too. Feeling like it controls me. You have worse health than if you feel this sense of it happened, but I'm in charge of me. It's not. The sense of connectedness, people who have loving relationships, doesn't have to be a lot. A person has a heart attack and goes home to a dog he loves. That's a better outcome than a person who goes home alone, is isolated. And there's just lots of data on supporting connected things in health. Even the studies here are usually called altruism. People who have a sense of both my work has purpose and this event in front of me has purpose. To teach me something, whatever. Just seems people who see it that way have better health than people who feel like it's purposeless and meaningless. And the final one is hope. So here are psychological principles, good solid science, but notice, if you really think about that, these are spiritual principles. The internal locus of control, you remember, is about being true to your deep wisdom. I'm in charge. How would I respond wisely, regardless of it? Integrity to your wise self. Oneness, purpose, meaning, those are spiritual principles. I would suggest that if you have a spiritual practice of some sort, if they're filtered through those 4 things, if they enhance those 4 things, it will be a good spiritual practice. On the other hand, spiritual practice is motivated by things like fear and shame and guilt. What does that do to that? You've got to think through. These may well be the principles of what spiritual well-being is all about, based on health science. Health has to do with total well-being. That's what health is. Now, let's shift gears. It's kind of like we have 2 minds. We've got this operating mind. These are the thoughts that we generate to give us a handle on the world. How do things work and what's the structure of things? They give you kind of a paradigm to work with. Okay? But they're just thoughts. And it also seems like we have this sort of core wise mind where your deep wisdom and values, it's like that old man walking up the trail with his staff, place within us that really kind of knows the right way to handle this. And the key has a lot to do with transform the automatic operating mind to operate out of this place. And that's kind of where we're going to be going here for much of the rest of the discussion. Here's just a quick little thing. This is borrowed from what's called cognitive therapy, one of the most effective kinds of psychotherapy. It says it's really not so much what goes on out there that upsets me as much as it is how I think about what's going on out there. So it works like this. You'll have the situation that seems to be causing distress or making you happy. And then there's your evaluative thinking about that situation. Here's some ways of thinking that give us some difficulty. How does that situation compare with what should be true? Or is this situation forcing me to do things or act in ways I don't want to? It's in control of me, being forced. Or is that situation threatening to me or my sense of worth or something valuable to me? And then just worth issues. What does that mean about whether I'm okay or not? Those are ways they're just ways of thinking that sometimes give us some difficulties, distress. Okay, and then C is our response. How do I feel about that situation? And the physiology gets involved, stress hormones, different things, and then how do I act? How do I respond? Now, does that ABC make sense to you? Okay, situation, generate thinking about it, and that causes feelings. And notice, this is a very important realization. The situation doesn't cause the feelings at all. It's just the event around which I create the thinking that causes me to feel and act this way. Well, who's in charge of the thinking? We can choose to think about it this way or that way. Let's go back to this simple little illustration of the kid, the teenager, who's been sort of putting you down and not listening to what you're saying. Okay? Teenager's being provocative. How do you feel when he does this? Putting you down, telling you what a dumb guy you are. How do you feel? You get angry. Okay, here we are, feeling angry. He makes me so angry, I tell myself. But does he make me angry? What's the thought? Why does it make you angry?
Feel insulted.
What's the thought that makes you angry? Well, it might be a should. He should treat me with respect. He should listen to me. He shouldn't act like that. It's obviously a should. And they all seem right. Okay? It seems like the only way to think.
Reflexive, right?
Yeah, it's reflexive. He's attacking my worth as a dad. You get caught up in all these thoughts, and they seem like the only way to think. But suppose that, and this wasn't working for you, and the behavior might be to put the kid down. If you think you're so smart, let me show you. Power play. Who's in charge here? You get caught up in all this stuff. This is ego stuff. Ego mind. Well, suppose that that wasn't working for you. You don't like the feelings that are going on. And that night, you went home and you got calm and quiet. And you just get out of those thoughts. Just get centered. And you start thinking about your kid from the wise self. What's he going through? Why is he acting like that? And suddenly, in this quiet state, out of all the should thinking, you get this little insight that says, he's trying to figure out who he is. He's trying to become independent, take some control of his life. There's been a little kid down here that's been dependent on us to tell him what's going on, and he wants to be an independent person. He's a teenager in between and doesn't know quite how to do that. He's struggling to become an independent young adult. And now, in this wise, quiet, unattached place, you start asking yourself, how can I, as a parent, help him to do this? And notice the feelings. What happened to the anger? It's just gone. It's no longer a should thing. Now it's like a compassion thing. He's struggling to figure out who he is. He needs to be independent. I want to help him be an independent adult and make good choices. What do I want to do as a dad for my kid? Do I want to put him down and make him think he's worthless and dumb? Is that really what I want to do? That's what my behavior was doing. But violating my own wisdom that says, every encounter with my kid, I want him to come away stronger and being honored and wise, no matter what he does. What he does isn't going to control me. I'm going to be the dad I want to do to help him with compassion through this, regardless of him. Who's in charge of me? And as soon as you do that, now you come up with a new kind of thinking. This deeper, wiser thinking about the same situation that creates very different feelings and behavior to the same situation. The point being, it's not the kid making me feel this way. I am making myself feel this way by the thinking I'm choosing. And the moment I shift to my deeper, wiser self, it starts becoming the eustress instead of the distress. Now, let's just quickly identify some of the most stressful kinds of thoughts. Just a few of them. But see if you don't think this is correct. A lot of distress comes from taking offense. They can't treat me like that. But, these are taking offense. This is the ego taking offense. Okay? Demanding things be different than they are. There's a certain irrationality to that. I demand that the kid not be trying to become independent the way he's doing it. Okay, well, trying to become independent, that's what's there. this issue. Hey, here's another one. How do I measure up? Am I making it? Am I okay? Am I lovable? Am I worthy? That's an ego thing. But we're going to come back to what I mean by that in just a moment. Feeling inadequate. I've got too much that I have to do. Why do you have to do it all? Well, because I've got to do it all to be okay, to be worthy, to show I'm successful. Okay, this is an ego trying to prove itself, in part. Being judgmental toward other people. Isn't that kind of, I'm cool, you're not so cool. This is ego judgmental thing. These things cause us a lot of our distress. This ego mind. Is who I am being threatened or diminished? Is a fearful response. Now, here's the first little step that's very useful. Is just recognizing those are just thoughts. They're not necessarily reality, especially if they're making you miserable. They're just thoughts. They seem like they're the right thought. But if they're causing a lot of trouble, their thoughts are just devices we create to function in the world. And if they're not working for you, there are better, wiser thoughts. This is the basic principle I'm talking about. And as you do that, suppose that. Let me throw this next one down. Suppose that you're able to just say to yourself, that's my ego thinking, that I should always win the arguments. Or that's my ego telling me that I've got to have power over this kid. What part of you is saying, that's my ego thinking? Is this not the wiser self? You're kind of sitting back here as this observer, saying, oh, there's my ego doing that again. Meditative techniques allow you to get into the observer and sort of watch what you're doing, becoming aware, like the cells, of the thoughts that I've been practicing or using. As soon as you do that, you kind of disempower those thoughts. They're just thoughts. And there are probably some better ones. I don't know what they are yet, but there's probably some better ones. Now, New Testament says, physician, heal yourself, but the Oracle of Delphi said, but first you must know yourself. Okay, and this is kind of what we're going to do here for most of the rest of the time. It's not just a mind up here, it's really sort of like two selves. There's this ego self, which has been called in some of the spiritual traditions the little self, the person I think I am, my CV and my accomplishments and what I want and who I think I am. This is the ego self. And we just learn this often from our environment. How do I compare to someone else? What's the measure of whether you're okay? All those, we just learn that stuff. Okay? And then there's this sort of deeper self, the real I am. The wise self, the real self, the big self. Big I am, sometimes it's talked about. And moving from the little ego self to the real self is called transformation. And is the essence of self, the real self, actualization. You actualize the wisdom. We can talk about this just a little bit. And this usually happens, first of all, just from awareness of the difference between the two selves. As soon as you know what the two selves are like, and you're aware of that, you can identify, well, I'm coming from my ego right now, or I'm coming from my wise place. And so what I'm going to do is, and this is where we start getting into your little handout here on the front page, is describe characteristics of these two selves, just so that we can notice which one I'm coming from. And as we do this, as I describe these two, I want you to tell me, or think within yourself, tell yourself, which of these two do I resonate with the most? The energy resonates. Okay. Which of these two selves do I love being like the most? I would love being like in the world. If you were to pick people you love being around, which of these two selves would you pick to be around? Okay, so let's just start. The first is this. One of the real essences of the little self is a notion of separateness. I'm over here, you're over there. How do we compare? Who's going to win in this? We're separate, comparative. Whereas the large self is driven by oneness. We're part of something larger together. And really enjoys others' successes. Instead of his success means he must have cheated, or he's better than me. What does that mean about me? This is the little separate ego self. The big self loves others' successes. My boys and I used to play basketball, and basketball is a great place to learn about life, pressures and stress and winning and losing, bad calls, and we talked about this on the way home. And the boys got really good about somebody would throw a cool move on them and beat them out. And instead of saying, he did that unfair, or what's the matter with me? The guys would say to him, man, that was a cool move. How did you do that? Show me how you did that. I mean, that's amazing. Now notice the difference in feeling between the two ways of thinking. The separate competitive versus loving other people's successes. Because it inspires you. All right, let's go a little further. The separate self, power over people, being in charge of things is important. The connected self loves power with people. Power to lift, inspire, help. Different kind of power. Whether it's we or whether it's you versus me. Separate. That gets into this. This is one of the biggest problems we have in our society right now. I mean, think about it. Congress. Us versus them mentality. Okay? If the other guy has a good idea, we've got to destroy it because it's going to make him look good, and then we won't look as good. Which mind is that?
Politics in general.
Okay. But suppose that it was we. We need some progressive thinking, and we need some conservative thinking, and there are roles for both of them. And let's listen to each other and get the best of both. Become a dynamic here to solve problems together. That's the oneness, the larger wise self. Well, I could do a little soapbox on that one. Okay, next category. The little ego mind is fear-driven. By and large, this kind of competition stuff. Am I making it? Am I okay? Or am I successful? Are you going to beat me? That's all fear-driven. Remember, fear drives that sensitivity for things like pain. Whereas the big I am is love motivated or compassion motivated. You begin to see people having dumb behavior because they're struggling with something. It's very different. Okay? The little I is protecting its ego. The big I just kind of feels safe. This is kind of the nature of the wise self. I'm safe. It just happens as you get into that place. The little I, the social mask, protecting, pretending, all those kind of things. The big I is authentic. Just saying your truth, and saying it not to win, to beat out or put down, but saying your truth with kindness. But being authentic. And feeling safe to be authentic without the mask. The little ego mind, often cynical and doubtful. He did that nice thing, but, his motive really isn't what he's trying to portray. This is cynicism, okay? Whereas the big guy is trust motivated. Now, you can be taken advantage of if you're too trusting, but which is the better way for health and well-being? You ascribe to others your own motives. If you're cynical and doubtful about others, you may be identifying your own ego motives. If you really want to know what problems you need to work on, find out what you're being judgmental about. That's the wise self telling you, okay? The ego kind of sees the world as sort of dangerous out there. Be careful. Something bad's going to happen to you. People are going to take advantage of it. Whereas the big I am sees beauty all around you in the world. Let me tell you a little story. A school teacher, sixth grade man teacher, told me this story. He described how the mother of one of his kids came into the class and was an artist and did these amazing things, teaching the kids even math and history through art. And it was just this brilliant, exciting thing. And the teacher was just overjoyed with what he saw happening from this wonderful mother artist. And then later that night, they had parent-teacher conferences, and the estranged father came in, estranged from the mother, came in and told, and the teacher was telling his father all these wonderful things and how great she was and so on, and the father said, "Let me tell you about her." And tells she had a tendency to get depressed. Some artists do that sometimes. A tendency to get depressed and describe all this negative stuff, but only see bad things. And he was miserable and angry and distressed about her. Now, here are 2 points of view. We all have good stuff and bad stuff. And it sounds like an old saw, but really think about this. When you look for the bad stuff, it makes you unhappy. And when you look for the good stuff in other people, it makes you happy. So it's a choice. Where do I give my attention? They're both there. The wise I am tends to look for the beautiful stuff. And the ego is looking for cynical, judgmental, bad stuff. The little I is always proving themselves. The big I am likes themselves. You like your deep wisdom and accept yourself. It's often the ego is externally justified. I'm only okay if I meet certain criteria or get people to approve of me, or all these external things that measure whether I'm okay. The big I am just sort of feels okay. And it's okay to be in process. I'm not where I'm going to be yet. It's okay to be learning and having fun in this process and getting better and wiser and smarter, and that's okay. There's a peace about that, is there not? Now remember, I'm asking you as we go through this, which one of these selves do you resonate with the most? Not necessarily what your habits have been, but what you love the most. The deep, wise I, and see if this doesn't kind of fit within you, okay? That there's the good, wise self and there's the ego. We all have these two parts. Okay? The little ego is easily offended. The big I often can't be offended. You say bad things to me, and I'm going to wonder why you felt like you need to say bad things, and let's solve this problem. Can't be offended. The ego often defensive. The big I often is able to take criticism as valuable feedback. Maybe it was already done, but maybe there's something there I need to think about. Constructive. Yeah, exactly. And the little ego, judgmental. Big I, compassionate. Well, don't want to belabor this too much. The little I is often controlled by externals, feels like a victim. Anytime you're feeling like a victim, my disease is controlling me, or this person's bad act makes me feel like I'm victimized. That's controlled by the external. It makes me feel so bad. But the big I am, it's here. How am I going to respond? I'm the one in charge of response. It's not controlling me, I do. Well, I'll let you look further. I've written all these things out because we can't do them justice in a few minutes here. But I'd like to have you take this form home and really think about the difference between the two minds, the two selves. And become very aware of the difference. And then start noticing which one of those am I coming from today in this situation. Is it my little ego self, or is it my wise self? And how would my wise self respond to this? So you're back here now as the observer, just saying, well, there's those ego thoughts again. That disempowers them. Instead of giving all kinds of attention to them, which empowers them. All right, I'm going to skip down now. So, little principle, feelings as a guide as to which self is doing the thinking. If it's causing distress, angry, inadequate body sensation, it's probably, in most circumstances, the little ego mind is doing it, that it's distressful. And if it's the good kind of stress, where you feel sort of calm and confident in the face of what's there, turning challenges into value, feeling connected, it's probably this larger wise self. So the feelings will tell you which mind I'm coming from. Both of them seem right. They both seem the only way to think, including the ego thoughts. But this will tell you, oh, there goes my ego again. Maybe I need to rethink this. The Hindus have said things like this. If this thing is kind of blowing you away, feels like it's totally giving you all kinds of trouble, you've given your power away to it. It's got the power over you. And they would say your power is your spirit, your real self. They would say simply, Call your power back. Call your real self back, your spirit back. Be the you want to be, whatever it is. Now, that seems simple. It's simple and easy are very different. Okay? Breaking old automatic ego habits of reacting, breaking habits is not easy, but once you have the picture, call your power back, your spirit, be real you. Then you can start breaking the habits through some practices that we'll quickly mention. But here's a little concept. The orange in there is the amount of pain a person has. And it's not uncommon for a person to feel like, I am pain. I am this disease. It's got me. But once you begin to realize it's here. Yeah, there's the same amount of pain. Quantity of orange. But I'm much bigger than the pain. And, in fact, there's still the same amount of pain. But I'm not only much bigger myself, but I'm part of something else much larger. I'm connected to a much larger thing. Now the question gets to be, this one, the thought is I need fixing. Okay? This one would say I'm much more than my pain. And this is I'm free and connected. The pain's here, but I am connected and free. Now here's the interesting question. Which one of these do you give the attention to? The pain and suffering, or to the rest of this larger me? It's also here. Where you give attention empowers that and inhibits the rest. Remember? So where do I give my attention? It's a choice. Okay, we don't have enough time to really do justice to this, but on the back side of your page, here are some principles and practices for facilitating this transformation from the little ego self to the larger I am. And it kind of goes like this. This one, you may recognize many of these practices are very common to some of the great spiritual traditions, but they're also very common in practical, clinical, mind-body approaches. Things that have been proven to work, incidentally, in fibromyalgia and many kinds of chronic pain, and affect the brain. In functional MRIs, the parts that inhibit the pain turn on with some of these practices. The first one is awareness of the difference. Just awareness. Look at those lists. Study those lists so that you can recognize which one am I coming from. Okay? Identify and label the ego thoughts. It's the larger mind that does that. And smile at the funny little devices we do to appear important. Anybody ever, don't raise your hand, anybody ever run into road rage? Well, kind of think about this for a minute. You know, somebody cuts you off, you get this thing. What's the thinking? I mean, just for a moment, step back. What's the thinking in road rage? Well, it's sort of like, I'm in a road race here. And he's breaking the rules, cutting in front of me, and he's going to try and beat me out. And you know, this is the ego, right? Competitive and who's being fair. And you sit back in this wise place, and you kind of chuckle, don't you? I mean, I see you laughing. You know, why am I getting caught up in a crazy road race and making myself angry about him? And when he does his thing to beat me out, I smile and say, poor guy's caught up in his ego trying to win his road race. Okay, but I don't have to do that. You begin to smile at the funny things our ego does to try to be important. Here's the point I'm making. The feelings, again, will tell you which mind you're coming from. Choose which mind you're going to give attention to and thus power to. Okay, second principle, stillness. Creating newness comes in the gaps between thoughts. We may get caught up in the past about bad things, maybe shame and guilt or anger or something, resentment. Or we may have thoughts about the future, worry, concern, about the future. Keep in mind, the past is really imaginary. We pick parts of the past and we blow them out of proportion. They're kind of imaginary. The future is imaginary. The only thing that's real is the present. What's here right now in front of me, and how am I going to be in this moment? That's the only thing you can control. You can't control the past, can't control the future. You can control how I'm going to be right here. And the way you get into that are simple little techniques. Stan Block wrote a little book called Come to Your Senses. You just give attention to simple things, your breath. You listen. Just for a moment. Take a breath. Let it out. Close your eyes and just listen to the sounds that you hear. Okay, now you can open your eyes. Just listening to the sound. What happens? You come into the present moment. You get out of all those thoughts. You just hear it. Touching. People have a little stone or stroke your dog. Okay. But just practice ways to be in this present moment is the notion. And really see nature when you go out instead of chugging along to get your half hour of exercise in. You just really see it. For example, to stop and be just engulfed in nature, one with it, starting to feel part of something larger, seeing the beauty. The stillness of all of that brings you into your wise mind. It's the wise mind that sees the beauty. But think of this for just a moment. See plants like this tree as the essence of love. Think about this. Plants just kind of give themselves to you. They feed you. They give you oxygen to stay alive. They give you shade. They nurture your soul. They're just there to love you. If you see that in the moment, you enter your wise mind. It becomes calming to the nervous system. You start feeling gratitude for this beautiful earth. You enter your wise I am mind. Or you start becoming judgmental. Well, I don't know why it's got that crooked limb on there. And you see the difference? Okay. Here's just a few stillness practices. We don't have time, but using your breath biblically, in the Old Testament is in Hebrew, the New Testament is in Greek. The word for breath is the same word as the word for spirit. Ruach in Hebrew is either breath or spirit. Pneuma in Greek is either breath or spirit. So as you breathe, just breathe in wisdom. Just give attention. Imagine breathing. You are breathing in energy that gives you life as you breathe. And so you just breathe it in. You let go of all the stuff you don't need, which you're doing when you breathe. So you just, in this moment, breathing in energy and wisdom, breathing out the other stuff. But you're in this moment as you breathe. Not about the future, not about the past. And here's an interesting thing. I saw a fascinating little study in pain. They did a functional MRI to look at the parts of the brain that light up, that inhibit pain. And people who they compare people that did nothing to people who just sort of followed their breath. They're just told that, nothing else, just kind of follow your breath. And the other group was told, follow your breath carefully, but you'll notice thoughts that pop in as you do this. You've got all these intrusive thoughts. And as they occur, don't be judgmental about any of them. Just notice them, accept that they're there, let them go, and give your attention back to breathing in energy and life. When you did it that way, non-judgmentally, with all these intrusive thoughts that will come when you try to be still, pain inhibitory areas of the brain light up much more than if you just breathe. Simple things like progressive muscle relaxation get you into the moment. Let's just do this just for 15 seconds. Okay? Put things aside just for a second, just a little bit. And with your right arm, tense your right arm and fist as you breathe in. Breathe in full, hold your breath in, tense, and notice what tension is, what it feels like. And on the out breath, let it flop into your lap. And notice the feeling that flows into the arm. Do it once more. Breathe in and tense that right arm. Tense your hand and arm. Notice what tension is. And on the out breath, let it flop. And notice this feeling. So again, this is not just the absence of tension. Compare that hand to the other hand. Can you feel what relaxation is? It's sort of like warm or tingly or something. That's muscle relaxation. And as you practice muscle relaxation, this is something simple. You start with one foot, and a leg, the other foot, the other leg. You know, on each breath, you work your way up your body. By the time you're done in 10 minutes or so, it's just so pleasant. But what you're doing, if you do that regularly, is you're learning what tension is and what relaxation is and how to transform tension to relaxation. And as you do that, the nervous system calms. And as you get good at it, just during the daytime, you'll start noticing, hey, I'm really tense. You hadn't even noticed before. Oh, there's tension. And in just a moment, you can calm things as you practice. Simple little relaxation techniques get you into the present moment with awareness, tension, and relaxation. It's these moments, they're called mindfulness, okay, of being in the present moment that are the moments of joy. You know, you're walking out along the road and you see that. And you just stop and you just get caught up in it. And when you go home that night, you'll remember that as one of the few moments in your life. It's a simple little thing. Just simple things. Eat mindfully. It will be a very enjoyable meal. Feel the food, taste it. Be grateful for it becoming part of you. The earth is feeding you. Just there with the food. It will become a delightful moment. Whereas, as we do in America, time sharing, TV's on, you're opening the mail, you're shoveling food in. Not very fun. It's simple, being present with what's there in front of you is what the brain loves to get into the calm, still state. Okay. Another principle, embrace the present. This is what's real. We talked about that. Accept that what's there is there. Instead of demanding it not be that way, as the ego often does, what's there is there. Be at peace with it. I can accept that it's here, and how am I going to deal wisely with this and have a certain choose to be at peace with what's there, or I can hate it and demand it not be there. And the acceptance, let's just go up there for a second. Being at peace with it doesn't mean accepting it. Doesn't mean that, you're not going to change it. You can't do anything about it. It actually allows you to be wiser in how to deal and change it. and take responsibility to creatively respond to whatever is there in this present moment. And what begins to happen, you just trust this process. I can't control the future, but if I'm here wisely in my big I am, with whatever is here, with the internal locus of control, connectedness, purpose, this is here for some reason. Let me find out what it is. As you do that, you'll find that you deal much better with it. And then you do that in the next moment. And then you do it in the next moment. And its future just kind of takes care of itself. This doesn't mean you're not planning for the future. But it means I'm dealing with each step as it comes. And good things happen in the future. Just trust that. That's the hope. The hope is not necessarily for a specific outcome. It's, I will deal well with whatever comes up. Because my wise I am knows how. Take the path of least resistance. Drop the burdens of defensiveness. Refuse to take offense. Talked about that, did relinquish the power to prove that you're right. Assume positive intentions. Other people do stuff. We don't have time to really explore this, but there's usually, nearly always, a positive intention between a behavior. It might be just another person needing to feel important. They're doing it in kind of dumb ways. But that's positive. We all need to feel important, okay? And so you honor the need to be important. You just honor the intention and help them feel important instead of putting them down because you're acting like the big man or something. You see what I'm saying? Okay. Here's a general principle. Effort motivated by love is always easier. By compassion, it's just always easier. Okay. The little self motivated by fear and self-protecting, and big I am motivated by compassion. Well, your heartfelt intention is the key to transformation. What do you want to bring? It's like this dad with his teenage son. What do you want to bring to each encounter? If you identify that, that's your wise self. If it's, I want to bring strengthening and honoring and compassion and listening, if that's your intention, and you give attention to your intention, it will empower that. You've got to know who you are and what your intentions are for every encounter. If you focus on the ego antics of others, you're unhappy. It's like the teacher story I told you with the mom that came in. But if you focus on the I am of others, you become happy. We've been highly conditioned to see the world through eyes of fear and judging. Suppose we just took off those glasses and instead put on the eyes of compassion and love. It sounds too simple, but it's a very profound notion. Let me just finish with this story. A relative, I won't tell you who they are, but their little kid got chickenpox. This, about 4 or 5 years old. And were miserable and crabby and irritable. And the mother walks in and the little kid says, "Get out of here, you don't care about me, you never cared about me, I hate you, you're a bad mother." Now, there are kind of 3 ways that she can respond to that. One is, protect yourself, defend yourself. What do you mean I don't care about you? You ungrateful kid, I've been around here all morning taking care of you. Okay, so you get caught up in all that. Which mind is saying that?
Ego.
Yeah, right, okay. Another one. Gosh, if my kid's saying I'm a bad mother, I guess I failed. That's been my whole life. I feel worthless. Which mind's saying that? Ego, see, I've got to prove myself. But, unfortunately, her mother was able to see this, okay? That all this provocative behavior is a symptom of the chicken pox. Here's this little kid scared to death, miserable, crabby. These are just symptoms of feeling miserable. And her mother's able to see that and just let her provocative behavior fly past, to see the heart of the scared little kid, and compassionately heal that. First thing she said was, don't worry, chicken pox is going to be gone in 3 or 4 days. No, hang in there, it's going to be okay. Ease the fear. And then say, I can understand how it's awful to have chicken pox, but actually I do love you. Let me get you something to eat and I'll read you a story. I think healing has to do with bringing separated things together. Your mother is seeing her with compassion instead of judging the behavior and getting caught up in all of the ego stuff around it. Later the little girl said, I'm sorry, Mom, I guess I didn't really mean that. But even if she didn't respond differently, notice how different the mother feels, seeing it through the eyes of the big I am instead of the ego. When it's distressful, there is eustressful. Connecting us more deeply with the way I'm handling it. Final little process slide. This is on your handout there at the bottom. Just a little process. Okay, the first step is this conscious awareness. I'm in charge of me. I can respond any way I want to. So which mind am I going to respond from? Just awareness. That's half the battle right there. Or solution. Yes. Practicing these stillness skills. Get out of the old thoughts with the relaxation, the mindfulness. Just let go. Get focused in the present moment. Come to your senses. Use your breath. Mindfulness meditation. Just get in the present moment. And in that moment, clarify. So how do I want to be? In this, what's a way I would deeply admire a person handling this situation really wisely? And you find that it's there. You can get out of those ego thoughts. And the final thing, we don't have time to explore, but a very powerful part of this is how you visualize yourself responding that way. The dad with his teenager in the kitchen goes home that night. He's gone, in this quiet place. He's seeing his kid needing to become independent. His intentions to lift the kid instead of putting him down. And now he pictures himself doing this, often in 2 phases. One out there like a movie. He watches from this observer place. Over here, he watches himself in his mind's eye. Walking into the kitchen, the kid does his funny antics, and the dad is responding in a new way. He might have written this down, his wisdom from his I am, a little script. Capture the details. What's the tone of my voice? What's the look on my face? What's my body posture? All kinds of stuff to know what it is. And he watches himself do it out there, from over here as the observer. And when he feels good about that, now he puts himself in the movie. He's walking into the kitchen, looking out of his eyes as the kid does his angry stuff. And he's doing it the new way. And you practice that 3 or 4 times to get for that situation, to get it through different levels of memory. It's that experiencing, the visualizing, experiencing the new way, getting the body involved. Then it plants a new picture of how I deal with this kind of situation. And you can do it for another one, and another one, and another one. And pretty soon it starts to generalize. I know how to deal with this stuff. Been there, done that. Here. That's a very powerful tool to change much more quickly than just talking about it. Okay, so the key though is that conscious awareness. So that summary, to be medically effective, stress resilience training needs to allow quieting the ego, getting into the big I am, directed at those 4 principles, internal locus of control. Are we connecting or disconnecting? What is the purpose of meeting here? Creating hope, and it needs to be experiential to change quickly. So just ask yourself these questions. Am I handling this in a way that increases my sense of responsibility for how to do it, or as a victim? That's That's the sensor control. Am I handling it in a way that increases or that connects us or disconnects us? Am I handling this that I see an opportunity here or that it's meaningless? Is the way I'm handling it creating hope for handling it well or hopelessness? That'll tell you whether it's going to be distressful or distressful. All right, thank you for your time and attention. I know we've gone a little extra over time. Any thoughts or questions about this?
Is this available somewhere? All of this part that was not on here?
It will. Is this going to be on the website?
Yes.
Yeah. It'll be on. This discussion will be on the website.
What is that?
There's the slides and things.
Website.
OfferUtah.org.
OFFERUtah.org is the website. I don't know. It'll take a little time to get it on, but sooner or later, all the slides will all be on the topic.
Is there any extra handouts?
Yes.
They're in the back of the...
Oh, I must walk back one. I'll back up on the way out. Thank you.
Okay. I have some others.
Can we ask a few questions about fibromyalgia afterwards? I am here.
Come on down. Yeah, come on down afterwards. And they'll be happy.
Okay.
Question was, can we talk about fibromyalgia and medical stuff after?
Do all these people have fibromyalgia here?
No, not everybody does.
Chronic fatigue.
Okay.
Or bucks.
Because this is the first time I'm out in something like this.
Welcome.
So I was just wondering.
Great to have you here.
I'm not the only one here with that issue, right?
You have the book here that you were talking about that we could buy. I thought you
It's
did.
on the table up here if you want to take a look at it. It's available through his website. Little pieces of paper with their website on it. You can order directly from them.
What do the initials OFFER stand for?
The Organization for Fatigue and Fibromyalgia Education and Research. There's a monthly meeting on the first Wednesday of each month, and there's often a conference, maybe annually or biannually, where national speakers are brought in. It's all available on that website.
I think this lecture has been one of the most educational and interesting lectures I've ever gone to. And I think that it applies to everything, not just fibromyalgia. I mean,
Yeah.
my body is preparing to die. I'm a very sick person, and to me, this class is like a diamond to have heard this.
I think you might feel like tonight is a buffet of appetizers. There are so many things that Dr. Smith touched upon that he could have talked about for an hour on each of these little parts. The rest of the summer, the next 4 or 5 sessions, is going to be given to going into this in depth. I didn't tell Dr. Smith that he was launching something because I didn't put any pressure on him. But he's just presented the preface for the next 4 or 5 Wednesday nights. In each case, we're going to have a component that's experiential. We'll talk about the 4 principles. We'll go into some of the details. What I wish could happen is he could give this speech again on a parallel screen with neurophysiology. Everything that was said tonight is based in medical science. So if you think this is kind of the soft, wishy-washy stuff, this is all hard science translated into human behavior. So we're going to try and make that bridge in the next 3 or 4 months, just kind of go back and forth. I don't have the solid grounding in the neurophysiology that he has, and I was glad to see some parts of that presented tonight. But he's got a way of bringing this all together, and I'm glad that he didn't get lost in silence.
Just the comment for giving the recording is that this may apply to things other than fibromyalgia and fatigue. My interest in stress and medicine came from studies at the University of Utah in primary care, where we found that well over half of the medical problems were highly related to mental stress. We created a program called the Stress Medicine Clinic to try to figure out how to deal with that in very practical ways. So you're exactly right, this doesn't just apply to pain and fatigue, but to a lot of medical problems.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yes.
Where can you get your new book? The one that you referenced on one of the slides.
The question had to do with the textbook called Mind Body Health. It's a textbook, so it's used in colleges, so it costs a little more as a textbook, because you don't sell a lot of textbooks. But if you're reading since you asked, Benjamin Cummings in San Francisco is the author, and it's Mind Body Health. My name, and Keith Karren, Karren. You can find it, or you can Google it and probably get a used copy. But it should be the 4th edition, not the earlier ones.
You can get it through Amazon.com. I'll have a copy of it here next month if you want to browse through it. It's a textbook in the sense that it is used in college classes, but don't let that scare you away. It's very readable. It's a book that you can pick up, open to any chapter, start in the middle, get something out of it, go to the table of contents, see what is most interesting, read that. You can read 3 pages and find it rewarding. It's not something you have to start at the beginning and slog through.
If I make a constructive comment, may I ask that you update our website to show that that's going to be topic of discussion? I looked today, and all it said was the next couple of meetings were just going to be a group discussion. And everybody else here who seems to have appreciated tonight's topic, please spread the word if that's going to be what we're discussing the next couple of Wednesdays.
Well, the group discussions that Dr. Drescher leads are built around all of this and how to apply
To
it.
boost everybody's, everybody seems to have enjoyed tonight's, and be a shame if everybody misinterpreted it.
All right.
I think everybody gets my point, right?
Okay, so the comment was that maybe update what the discussion will be on some of these education
It
meetings.
leaves that unknown to anybody.
No charge. This is all free. If you come to the yearly meeting, there's a small charge for the facility, but most of this is all free.
Now, what was that name on the internet?
Offer, O-F-F-E-R, Utah.org. All right, thank you so much.